Shadow Hack. Chapter 71, Is There Any Hope? The number of fifth-dimensional beings seemed to have lessened. Big Xiong, who was driving the war chariot, suddenly discovered this anomaly. At the beginning of their wild escape, they were getting attacked by an increasingly greater number of descending fifth-dimensional beings. But now, the number of attacks had decreased. There can only be one reason for this. There is someone moving ahead of us that had attracted the attention of the descending fifth-dimensional beings. Li Yunmu said in a serious tone. Yunmu, are you certain about that? Hearing this, Crooked Teeth Jiang's expression became better as he asked the first intelligent question. Isn't it obvious? Li Yunmu silently pointed towards the vestiges of wreckage in the front which were created by the golden cloud guards that had passed through here earlier. It was clear that the luck of the Big Bear battle squad was very good. The odds of them, who were at the center of great spell of dimensional field, being able to retreat back to the steel castle with their lives weren't very high, even with the Thunder God war chariot. However, the golden cloud guards dispatched by the Fluxer Guild towards the mountain ridges had just saved them from this calamity. It wasn't a coincidence. Although the distance between the two squads was very large, they were moving in the same path in the opposite direction. However, since the wilderness was vast and due to the lack of vision at night, they hadn't encountered each other when the golden cloud guards passed through. I understand now. We should move along this path created by these traces and allow them to be our cannon fodder. Haha, I am really too smart. The idiot trio realized instantly and laughed mischievously while looking at each other. The feeling of narrowly avoiding a calamity felt very good. However, while everyone believed that it was someone moving in front of them and acting as cannon fodder, this was also just a huge misunderstanding. Since there wasn't any crisis at the moment, Li Yunmu didn't say anything. Under the pretense of resting, he closed his eyes and his consciousness re-entered his consciousness sea. At this moment, the two shadows had already closed in on the Dwarf Witch clan's chief. Naturally, now that he had absorbed the blood cloud, the Dwarf Witch clan's chief seemed to have transformed into another monster. His skinny and dried-up body had already become plump and sturdy. His height had increased from 1.2 m to 3 m and even Li Yunmu, who was just watching from his consciousness sea, had sensed its terrifyingly powerful presence which was emanating from the 12-colored majestic rainbow flux energy filling his body. Moreover, among the 12-colored rainbow light erupting from his body, there was a blood thunder. Perhaps, this blood-colored thunder energy could be classified as the source of its dark flux energy. Fifth Dimension's King-class monster. He was fully assured that this should be a King-class monster. Until this moment, Li Yunmu had dreamed many times of encountering a King-class monster. From whom, he would collect the legendary dark flux energy after killing it. This dream was very beautiful, but it was just a fantasy. However, when it was now happening in reality, it didn't go as he had dreamt. A King-class dimensional beast with a 12-colored rainbow. Even though it was a human-type dimensional monster, it was still extremely powerful. Powerful to the extent that Li Yunmu didn't have any idea about to do about the being in front of him. In his estimation, death was the only conclusion. However, it was absolutely not the death of the Dwarf Witch clan's transformed chief, but rather, that of his two shadows. Only after seeing it for the first time did he finally understand the pinnacle power of the fifth dimension, the rainbow crystal flux energy. In this fifth dimension, it was the ruler. There was no one who could shake its position. Even if a rainbow crystal flux disciple, who was in the same layer, had challenged it, winning would be impossible. Thou hath destroyed the offspring of this king. Thou hath massacred the dwarf witch race, this crime deserves a death penalty. The ice-cold voice of the dwarf witch clan's chief echoed in the ears of the unafraid shadows. His expression was as if he was looking at two ants. Li Yunmu, who was watching everything like a god, discovered that this aged clan chief had a hint of sorrow concealed deep within his ice-cold gaze and apathetic tone. Li Yunmu slightly exclaimed. After careful calculations, he realized that his conduct in the last 10 days had really been too excessive. After all, the Dwarf Witch clan were human-like monsters and had knowledge about social structure. He had massacred everyone and destroyed their entire race. Thinking about this, he felt like an extremely evil person whose sins had filled the heavens, but there wasn't any buts, who asked both sides to fight against each other. Humanity and dimensional monsters were on opposite sides, there were no two thoughts about it. If the population of dimensional monsters wasn't lessened from time to time, then the real world of humanity would simply be welcoming a calamity. Young Shadow, get rid of it. There mustn't be any apprehensions about it, use your full strength. Li Yunmyo coldly commanded the two shadows. Soft-hearted? Humanity? What were these things? He, Li Yunmyo, wasn't a good person from the time he was ordinary. From childhood, he had learned that this was a world where the strong preyed on weak and only the strongest survive. Battle without worries. Even if death was certain or the disparity between their strength was huge, one cannot be terrified and must continue on. The two shadows seemed to have sensed their master's battle intent as they unleashed charged assault, increasing their speed and accelerating as fast as possible. However, at the next instant, the clan chief of the Dwarf Witches made Li Yunmyo aware of the huge difference in their strength. Its two huge and strong hands made a grasping motion towards the sky. Next instant, a pair of huge black golden hatchets appeared in both his hands. Die, bandit! His angry howl shook the entire mountain ridges and spread over the entire stronghold. The clan chief then leaped into the sky from the altar that was raised up from the ground. He had jumped several tens of meters high. When he came back down to the ground, he had already moved more than 100 meters from his original position in a moment and heavily chopped towards the young shadow. Critical leap strike. This was the critical leap strike with its power displayed to the pinnacle, formidable, extremely formidable. He didn't need to see the outcome, only the events that happened. Hearing the loud howl of the clan chief, Li Yunmyo was extremely shocked. This was the strength of a 12-colored rainbow human-type king? The clan chief fell heavily on the ground from a height of several tens of meters. The ground split from the jolt and the heavy hatchet wrapped in terrifying energy fell upon the young shadow who had unleashed charged assault to the pinnacle. A booming sound like an artillery shell exploding rang out. You also die. As one of the hatchets of the clan chief fell on the young shadow, the hatchet in his right hand swung towards Shadow-2 flying at it from the right. Within an instant, this battle seemed to have concluded with this incomparably terrifying energy. Notification: Young Shadow has received the critical leap strike from the Dwarf Witch clan's chief. Arrow Evasion's advance judgment has been sealed due to the enemy's terrifying presence. Insect Step couldn't properly sidestep because of the intimidating effect of the fierce attack. The shadow could only resist this attack head-on with the War Blade. The War Blade is extremely close to breaking, the Battle Soldier combat suit is nearly destroyed. The young shadow had received serious injuries. Despite the Admiralty cover reducing 48% of the incoming damage, this critical leap strike of the clan chief was just too heavy, to the extent of being frightening. With just this single attack, the young shadow, which seemed to have erupted with power from charged assault, had already received serious injuries while Shadow-2 who had been flying towards the clan chief was hit off course but didn't receive any serious injuries. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if a Fluxer who had gold crystal armor had to face this critical leap strike of the clan chief, he wouldn't have been able to resist and would have certainly died. At this moment, Li Yunmyo finally understood why the others didn't make any plans to attack the stronghold. It wasn't that they didn't want to, but rather, under the limit of strength in the fifth dimension, it was impossible to attack this place simply by relying on a Fluxer who had condensed golden crystal armor. Let alone mention that fact that before facing it, they would have to face the countless dwarf witches, several fifth-dimensional beings descending, and the endless tree wizard monsters that would have whittled away all the strength of the squad little by little. Li Yunmyo could attack only because of his formidable defensive cultivation method, Admiralty cover, which blocked almost half of the incoming damage, that his shadow wouldn't really die, and that he could also hack without any time restriction. But if all these factors were exchanged with human lives, then the price would have been too great, to the extent that no power in the region could bear it. And after reaching this point, the two Shadow would only be killed again and again. Li Yunmu didn't have any more hope of victory and was ready to end it here. In face of such a huge disparity in strength, could a miracle really happen? Chapter 72, Swirling Sky. The heavily injured young Shadow still hadn't given up. Regardless of how severe its injuries were, as long as the Shadow wasn't completely killed, there would be no effect on their battle strength. Young Shadow stood up after being thrown far away and within the next instant, unleashed Insect Step in addition to charged assault and once again rushed towards the Clan King. Shadow 2 was also the same, both of them first used charged assault before unleashing Violent Blade from different angles. One from the left and the other from the right, different angles but same target. First strike, second strike, third strike, 7th strike, 13th strike, 15th strike, 18th strike. The 18 strikes of the Violent Blade, which had been upgraded to the 4th layer, were completely unleashed. The Clan King with a hatchet in each hand, by relying on its formidable strength and rainbow energy, forcibly resisted the 36 successive strikes without a single scratch. It wasn't that the 4th layer Violent Blade wasn't powerful, rather, the opponent's rainbow energy was extremely profound. This was the disparity between their absolute strength. This time, the protective armor of the battle soldier equipment of the young Shadow had been smashed and broken down completely by the impact force of the heavy chop. The Clan King was astonished that his critical leap strike was surprisingly unable to kill this little ant before his eyes. It could clearly sense that the strength of these two Shadows wasn't very powerful. However, they possessed an astonishing defense and could thus endure his hit. H.A.D.W. The Clan King raised his huge hatchet and just at the moment when Shadow 2 was retreating after using 18 strikes of Violent Blade, it was wrapped with a trace of blood-colored thunderbolt. The Clan King explosively burst through the air, chopping down towards the retreating Shadow 2. And just when this enormous and sturdy hatchet was just about to tyrannically strike Shadow 2. Danger critical strike. Sensing that this hatchet couldn't be stopped, Shadow 2, who was facing imminent death, immediately unleashed the danger critical strike. Next instant, the 18 strikes were completely unleashed, kicking up a violent wind. Peng 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 peng. The 18 successive strikes heavily struck the hatchet, but this wasn't enough. The 19th and most critical strike, which had the strength of all 18 strikes of Violent Blade combined into one strike, and was wrapped up in profound blade energy, violently struck. Bang! In that moment of danger, the strike containing the combined strength of previous 18 strikes landed and finally jolted the Dwarf Witch Clan King. As it happened, when Shadow 2's critical strike landed on the right hatchet of the enormous and strong Dwarf Witch Clan King, the right hatchet was thrown away and his body was thrown into the air with an explosion. Similarly, Shadow 2, who had also been hit by opponent's incoming heavy blow, was forced to retreat back several tens of meters. Li Yunmu had watched everything happen clearly. His heart sunk upon seeing that even danger critical strike, his supreme skill with such explosive burst in power, could only knock away the hatchet from the opponent's hands. Uninjured, the opponent hadn't suffered any injuries whatsoever. This was the strength of a king-class dimensional monster? But Shadow 2's danger critical strike was sufficient to provide an opening. Young Shadow, who had been thrown away to the other side, immediately grabbed this opening and flux energy erupted through its whole body while it rushed towards the Clan King, who had been falling from mid-air. Violent Blade. First strike, second strike, 7th strike, 13th strike, 18th strike. 18 strikes. Availing itself of the opportunity that the opponent couldn't use its strength properly, the young Shadow successively launched its strikes, with each strike heavier than the last, each chop quicker than the last. Within seconds, all 18 successive strikes landed on the Clan King's body. Still not enough actually. After being upgraded to the 4th layer, the combined power of the 18 successive strikes had reached an absolutely terrifying level. Li Yunmu was fully convinced that even a fluxer who had congealed his golden armor would have been unable to resist these 18 strikes. However, even after being struck by these 18 strikes, only a part of Clan King's 12-colored rainbow crystal armor dimmed slightly. After these 18 strikes, the war blade in its hand finally crumbled into pieces. But he still wasn't done. To Li Yunmu's astonishment, the little shadow kicked with its one foot straight towards it. Surprisingly, at this moment, it had unleashed the Wind God Tornado Kick. The heavy kick landed perfectly on the Clan King's body, falling in mid-air, sending it back up half a meter in the air. It was then followed by a second kick, then a third kick, then a fourth kick. When the little shadow unleashed the Wind God Tornado Kick, at this moment, the attack speed of each kick was slower compared to the last one, as if moving in a slow motion. But then again, every kick seemed to contain more strength than the last. However, when it continued to launch kicks one after another, each time when he spins his leg to launch the kick, the Wind God Tornado Kick would produce the whirlwind locking effect. That's right, this was just the special characteristic of the Wind God Tornado Kick. When each kick was followed by another, the special effect of whirlwind locking would be strengthened by a little each time. This was the reason why, although the Wind God Tornado Kick skill would often be easily broken down by the target, once the stacking reaches the fourth kick, it would be unstoppable. When the enemy loses all stable footing because of the whirlwind locking effect, after the 10 successive kicks of the Wind God, it would certainly give rise to despair in the enemy's heart. The enemy could sense that he could only helplessly endure the 10 kicks without any ability to counterattack. This was an absolutely unrivaled effect of the Wind God Tornado Kick. Until now, Li Yunmu had always felt that this kicking skill, classified as an A-grade battle skill by the system, had mediocre power. Apart from the whirlwind effect and increasing movement speed, this skill's destructive power was only so-so. It was far from being comparable to Admiralty Cover's defensive power, which was similarly an A-grade skill. However, all his previous doubts were completely erased at this moment. Opportunity, this was absolutely the only opportunity. One good opportunity to wipe out this 12-colored Rainbow King class dimensional monster. Li Yunmu's heart began to thump loudly. He kept staring blankly at the young shadow who had kicked the Clan King that was bound by the whirlwind more than a dozen meter high, launching one kick after another. Next instant, as he woke up from his daze, he instantly grabbed this opportunity. He didn't spectate any longer as his consciousness directly descended into the body of S.H.A.D.O.W. At this moment, S.H.A.D.O.W had completely lost all its strength after launching the danger critical strike and was lying far away on the ground. However, even if its vitality had been completely used up, Li Yunmu's vitality was still there. Moreover, the battle soldier equipment still provided S.H.A.D.O.W a 5 times amplifying effect to its strength and speed. Enough, this should be enough. Li Yunmu's mind shuddered. Next, he hooked up with S.H.A.D.O.W and initiated charged assault and rushed madly towards the distant Clan King falling in air. He must connect, definitely must connect. Currently, the young shadow had already completed the 10 Wind God kicks. It was falling back to the ground together with the Clan King. Right at this moment, Li Yunmu, who had been wildly rushing with the limited support of the battle soldier equipment, finally reached their location. Wind God Tornado Kick. He used his full strength to launch the first kick, which landed perfectly on the huge body of the Clan King. Second kick, Li Yunmu kicked once again. Because the flux energy in this body had been almost used up, only after launching 2 successive kicks did he finally stabilize himself to continue with the falling Clan King. Third kick success. After the 3 kicks were continuously launched, the quickly disappearing whirlwind locking effect strengthened by a bit. Then came a 4th kick, 5th kick, 7th kick, 10th kick. Using the 10 kicks of the Wind God, Li Yunmu managed to lock the Clanning in the air again. Young Shadow! Li Yunmu bellowed. Young Shadow didn't betray his expectations. If this had been S.H.A.D.O.W, whose shadow spirit didn't have enough experience, then perhaps it would have been unable to connect. However, young Shadow was different. It didn't require any instructions from Li Yunmu and had already unleashed charged assault and rushed towards the clan king, launching the first form of the wind god tornado kick as the main strike of the charged assault. The kick, whose power was amplified by 50%, pushed the clan king's falling body back upwards. Li Yunmu, who had fallen to the ground, began to tremble with excitement. The legendary king-grade monster of the fifth dimension had been finally defeated by him. The even more exciting discovery was about the wind god tornado kick, which was counted an A-grade skill by the system. Its truly terrifying characteristic wasn't its power, but rather, the whirlwind locking effect which increased with every form. Chapter 73, Important Treasure. Bang! With the sound of an explosion, the Dwarf Witch clan chief's heavy body fiercely smashed into the ground. After young Shadow's final kick, this king of Dwarf Witches finally lost all vitality and died. So I finally kicked him to death. Li Yunmu's weakened body fell limply to the ground. From the time they started using the Wind God Tornado Kick on clan chief till the present, 3 hours had passed. For 3 hours, Li Yunmu and young Shadow had been tirelessly kicking it again and again, one after other for a long time. Even Li Yunmu himself didn't know how many times they had unleashed Wind God Tornado Kick during this period. Finally, the unexpected had happened, he had rewritten the outcome. What's called a miracle? This was a miracle. Using the 10 forms of Wind God Tornado Kick several times one after another to shake up the boundless rainbow energy of the Dwarf Witch clan chief, finally, after persisting for a long time, its rainbow energy was finally used up, thus revealing its strong body with terrifying defense. Following the fall of Dwarf Witch King, the effect of the great spell of dimensional field gradually disappeared. At this moment, Li Yunmu, who was controlling the second Shadow's body, had fixed his gaze on the Dwarf Witch clan chief whose rainbow energy had been scattered everywhere. At this instant, its body suddenly exploded like a bubble and quickly dried up, returning back to its previous skinny and aged appearance. The king used up the last of its energy to look at Li Yunmu. At this moment, its gaze seemed to have passed through the second Shadow's body and directly looked into Li Yunmu's consciousness. This one glance was full of unwillingness and resent. Suddenly, its head fell down to earth and it finally died. However, Li Yunmu seemed to have been looking at some bitter spirit which fiercely blended with young Shadow's body. What had happened? Ding! You have killed the most powerful boss, the Dwarf Witch King, of the current H.A.C.K location. You have received a one-time bonus of 10,000 experience and ability points. You have also absorbed 1,000 space elements from the opponent. The shadow has picked up a pair of large gold and black hatchet which fell from the enemy. Ding! You have obtained a 12-colored Rainbow King Flux Crystal. Ding! You will be haunted by the resentful soul of the Dwarf Witch King. Ding! Because you have killed a King-class boss monster, you have obtained a special dimensionality box as a reward. To receive these special dimensionality boxes, you have to kill 10 King-class boss monsters. Ding! The system has detected a destruction-type energy on the Dwarf Witch King's body. Would you like to collect and transform into your own? Ding! The system has detected an unknown rune language fragment on the Dwarf Witch King's body. The shadow has automatically collected it. Ding! The system has detected a piece of precious origin dimensional stone. The shadow has already collected it. Soon after the Dwarf Witch King was killed, a series of system notifications about his earnings left Li Yunmu gobsmacked. 10,000 experience and ability point? Furthermore, 1,000 space elements? As well as a king-grade rainbow energy flux crystal? Even the bitter soul of the Dwarf Witch King? Although he had prepared himself long ago that his profits would certainly not be ordinary when he finally killed the Dwarf Witch King after preserving for a long time, when the sound of the system's notifications echoed in his mind, it still made Li Yunmu go giddy with joy. But all those above-mentioned profits weren't important. The most important harvests were still the ones that Li Yunmu had obtained from the body of the Dwarf Witch King. Black golden hatchet, blood-colored thunder energy, rune fragment, as well as an origin dimensional stone. Wait a minute, Origin Dimensional Stone? Li Yunmu seemed to have suddenly woken up from his daze. For some reason, when he heard these 3 words, his heart began to thump loudly due to the fear of disappointment. System, in your last notification, you said you have detected a piece of Origin Dimensional Stone. Li Yunmu asked while trembling with terror. Yes, the system's detection is not a mistake. This is certainly a piece of Origin Dimensional Stone. Congratulations, host. Just this one Origin Dimensional Stone surpasses the other earnings by 100 or 1,000-fold. After receiving the system's confirmation, Li Yunmu's mind didn't stay in S.H.A.D.O.W anymore. His consciousness instantly returned back to his body and he immediately checked his storage badge. Sure enough, true to what the system had informed him, he could clearly see the pile of extraordinary things lying calmly in his storage badge. Among them, the most eye-catching item was the pair of black heavy hatchets with golden specks. This pair of hatchets occupied the majority of the space in the storage badge. The golden black hatchets fully extended to 1.2 m and could barely be placed inside the storage badge after being in a slanted position. However, they couldn't catch Li Yunmu's attention. Soon, he discovered a damaged ancient book. The damaged book had a total of 5 pages and every page was written in the dimensional language used in higher dimensions. With just one look at these glittering dimensional marks, he could clearly tell that this wasn't an ordinary book. The damaged rune page which he had obtained long ago after destroying the mid-sized dwarf witch tribe seemed to have many similarities with this fragment. The only difference between the two was that the latter was a whole fragment while the former was only 1 page. Li Yunmu joined them together. Now, he had a total of 6 pages and he also discovered that he still lacked 4 more pages to complete this book. However, it wasn't the main priority here. Afterwards, he completely ignored the King-grade Rainbow Flux Crystal, the special dimensionality box, as well as the source of destruction-type dark flux energy which he coveted, and his eyes finally fell on one corner of the storage badge where he found an unremarkable thumb-sized stone. This stone was completely black and seemed to be no different from a rock crushed during the extraction of ores in mines. However, when Li Yunmu saw this stone, his heartbeat instantly became rapid and his whole body began to tremble. Not because of fear but because of excitement. He couldn't believe his eyes. Origin Dimensional Stone. That's right, it was absolutely a genuine Origin Dimensional Stone. It wasn't an ordinary dimensional stone, neither was it a root dimensional stone, it was the Origin Dimensional Stone. The rarest origin stone of the legendary huge dimensional stone which had descended on Earth more than 200 years ago. Although it was only the size of a glass bead, when its price was compared to all the above-mentioned profits, they were just fleeting clouds in front of it. The legendary Origin Dimensional Stone. Li Yunmu's thoughts returned back to the time when he was within the Great Windy City Courtyard's library cramming as much knowledge as he could. He remembered a series of legends regarding the Origin Dimensional Stone from an ancient book. Among them the comment he remembered clearly was, "The one who obtains an Origin Dimensional Stone can split the heavens and earth apart." This vague comment had left a profound impression on his heart. He hadn't remembered wrongly. This small stone in front of him was precisely a piece of that Origin Dimensional Stone which could split the heavens and earth apart. According to rumors, whenever this stone had appeared, the whole of Central Continent, no, all 6 continents had fought to obtain it. Because that dimensional stone had fallen on Earth long ago, presently, the regions where the Origin Dimensional Stone could be found had become increasingly rarer. Strictly speaking, its existence wasn't something that a person like Li Yunmu with his background could access. In exchange for this single piece, he could even train under a supreme sage. In exchange for this piece, he could even enter a huge ancient clan which had existed for countless generations. He could even create another world and have his own grand kingdom. Chapter 74, My Personal Heaven. If ordinary dimensional stone could only open a delivery channel and root dimensional stone could produce even more ordinary dimensional stone, then Origin Dimensional Stone could open up an empty world belonging just to him. Li Yunmu hadn't taken out this Origin Dimensional Stone, but just hearing about this made his heart beat faster. Fortunately, following the death of the dwarf witch clan chief, the beings of the fifth dimension had stopped descending. The whole space affected by the dimensional field spell had once again stabilized. When the Big Bear battle squad had finally returned back to the Cloud Castle, a hint of white color could be seen in the sky. However, right now, the people from every city of the Cloud Castle were extremely busy. The people from every city's great courtyards had come out to receive the battle squads who were able to rush back, but there were still many battle squads that hadn't returned back and contact had been lost with them. This time's rookie training had the highest number of casualty in the history of training exercises. Li Yunmu, who returned back to the Lucky Wind Great Courtyard with the support of Senior Tang and others, had never expected that this would happen. If he had known earlier that the great spell of dimensional field would lead to so many casualties, then he certainly wouldn't have gone to provoke the king's stronghold. But if all of this hadn't happened, then the origin dimensional stone wouldn't have fallen in his hands. At this moment, Li Yunmu could only think of an ancient proverb. Many must labor for one to succeed. Only the strong would survive and the weaker ones would be eliminated. That's why he must try harder. After returning back to the Lucky Wind Great Courtyard, everyone returned back to their homes. Regardless of the turbulent atmosphere on the outside, presently, everything was peaceful for him. What about the Lucky Wind battle squad? Also, how are the other two battle squads? What is their present situation? While eating the hot food provided by the courtyard, Li Yunmu couldn't help but ask. Lucky Wind battle squad was still fortunate, they had been near the boundary of the river basin region. Since the great spell had been stopped, they must be rushing back. However, Luojin had also been attacked, similar to you. Senior Tangan looked at Li Yunmu with a strange expression. Previously, he used to think that this junior of his was a complete retard. Who could have known that his battle instincts were so formidable that because of him, the Lucky Wind City had reached 80th position. Furthermore, he had heard that Li Yunmu had also suffered a sneak attack by a half-step gold crystal flux disciple. The result presently, Luojin was still seriously injured, but this guy seemed to be completely healthy. Then what about Lunuja, Senior, is she alright? Li Yunmu wasn't concerned about Luojin's situation, he only cared about people who had shown consideration to him. She's alright, she is very good. It is tacit regulation in this world that people with deep background cannot be attacked, you can put your heart at ease. A female senior standing by Senior Tang An's side said in a teasing tone. That's good. Now, I only hope that Li Ziai, Zhang Ying and their groups are also alright. Li Yunmu nodded without saying much and continued to consume mouthfuls of the food. After returning back to the Steel Castle, Ling Shuang had been transferred back to Fenghua City. Originally, a common fluxer didn't have the power and authority to transfer frequently between competing cities. But who was Ling Shuang? Behind her was her master, Lord Battle Sage. Therefore, she could come and go with confidence. With great difficulty, he returned back to his residence in the Maple Forest courtyard. After entering his small cabin, he immediately closed the door as he was unable to endure any longer. First, Li Yunmu requested the system to scan his current surroundings. After discovering that there wasn't any surveillance, he immediately took out the Origin Dimensionality Stone from his storage batch. When he held the Dimensional Stone in his hand for the first time, he could immediately sense the special energy fluctuations coming from this stone. Next instant, his consciousness immediately sensed an empty space, the empty world only for his personal use. The area occupied by this space world wasn't very large, the land extended only to a few square meters. It couldn't even be compared to his small bedroom. However, it was enough, more than enough. System, I want to offer sacrificial refining to this origin dimensional stone. Without wasting any time, Li Yunmu immediately summoned the system. According to the ancient book in the library, there was a method to refine the origin dimensional stone and turn it into his own by binding himself as the master of this empty world. This method was extremely complex, and with his present financial resources and background, he simply won't be able to bear the costs. However, he remembered that the system's previous notification about whether he wanted to bind the Origin Dimension Stone. Now that there was finally no one around him, he immediately wanted to bind this precious treasure and become its master. Only then would he be able to prevent other people from detecting the special energy fluctuations emitted by the stone. At the same time, Li Yunmu himself would also formally become the master of this world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that as long as he completely refines this origin dimensional stone, then in this empty space of the origin dimensional world, he would be a god. Within the empty world of the origin dimensional stone, no one would be able to do anything to him, even if it was a supreme fluxer came personally. Ding! Confirm again whether the host wishes to refine this origin dimensional stone. The cost of refining this origin dimensional stone would be 30,000 experience points. Is it really so high? Yes. Furthermore, this is under the circumstance that the origin dimensional stone owned by the host isn't very large, so do you confirm? Yes, I cannot hesitate, do it immediately. Li Yunmu loudly rejoiced. Fortunately, after he had condensed his second shadow, his accumulation rate of experience points had more than doubled. Furthermore, after killing wizard tree monsters, which granted him triple experience points, his earnings shot through the roof. In addition, he had also received 10,000 experience points after killing the dwarf witch clan chief, which brought the total number of experience points he had to 56,000, which were more than sufficient for the job at hand. However, because of this, the distance to his goal of congealing the third shadow would once again increase. But there was no comparison between the origin dimensional stone and the third shadow. Not to mention the fact that his congealing of the third shadow would only be delayed, so there wasn't any need to hesitate. Following the reconfirmation, he held the origin dimensional stone in his both hands, and a warm current immediately bubbled forth from inside his body, rushing to the origin dimensionality stone. Meanwhile, the progress bar for the refining appeared within his consciousness: c. 1%, 7%, 32%, 47%, 76%, 100%. Li Yunmu continued to pour energy for full 1.5 hours. Just when he was completely exhausted, the refining progress bar finally reached 100%. Rumble. The origin dimensionality stone thoroughly integrated with Li Yunmu's body. Suddenly, a huge tremor seemed to have passed through Li Yunmu's surroundings. His whole body instantly lost all energy. When his consciousness was restored again, he discovered that the region where he was present now was completely different. In this space, the ground spread only to 3 square m. A dark empty space was spread everywhere around him. If he was someone who feared heights, then he would have certainly fainted from shock. Beautiful heavenly world. However, Li Yunmu wasn't someone who was afraid of heights. He instead opened his eyes, widely inspecting the gloomy heavens that covered his surroundings. The dimensional world. Sure enough, this was his own dimensional world. The elders had called it as the Heart's World, but this Heart's World could also be enlarged. It required only one thing to expand, and that was dimensional crystals. In other words, the flux energy crystals. Next instant, Li Yunmu took out a second layer stable black flux energy crystal and lightly released it from his hand, allowing it to fall on the ground. Instantly, the small ground, which originally only extended to 3 square m, seemed to spread quickly as if it had absorbed a large amount of fertilizer. After a long while, the original 3 square m ground had already extended to 4 square m. Chapter 75, There is no harm in comparison. 1 second layer black crystal can roughly expand the land by 1 square m. Li Yunmu seemed to mumble after some thinking. 1 square m. Probably wasn't the exact number, it was only his rough estimate. It should be a little more than 1 square m, but the disparity shouldn't be large. Soon, he took out an ordinary crystal and dropped it on the ground. Next instant, the land increased again, but this time the increase was very small, roughly 1/5 or 1/6 the increase of the second layer black crystal. So that's how it was. A second layer black crystal could produce approximately 5 times more energy compared to a first layer ordinary crystal. If Li Yunmyu uses flux crystals to increase the land in the origin dimensional stone space, the conversion would more or less be according to the same rate. After making his decision, Li Yunmyu didn't hesitate any longer and took out a pile of ordinary crystal to throw on the ground. This pile of ordinary crystals had 378 crystals which were accumulated after massacring the wizard tree monsters. Previously, he had needed 200 crystals to congeal his crystal armor, but now, he didn't require them since he had obtained the 12-colored Rainbow King Flux crystal to congeal his armor. So, what other place than here to use these flux energy crystals? As soon as the 378 first layer crystals were thrown on the ground, the land under his feet immediately began to fiercely expand. Only after a few minutes did this enlargement of the land come to a stop. Li Yunmyu glanced at it once and couldn't control himself. Awesome, good, this was too good. The piece of land which previously spread over only a few square m had now expanded to 70 square m after the pile of ordinary crystal were thrown down. The sensation of satisfaction he received from watching a world quickly expand had bewitched him. Soon, he again took out 46 second-layer black crystals and threw them on the ground. The land under his feet increased again, reaching an area of 110 square m. The average diameter had already exceeded 10 m. This is my world. Could this be considered as my personal heaven? Li Yunmyu walked to the edge of the land and looked downwards. There was only an endless void underneath and a dark sky covered his surroundings. This whole heavenly world was extremely infatuating for him. As long as he had sufficient flux crystals, Li Yunmyu could expand the area even more. This was the reason why the origin dimensional stone could make even the beings at the pinnacle go mad. He could only dare to think he had now created his own heavenly world. As long as he allows it absorb even more stable flux energy crystals, the heavenly world would continue to expand and become even more stable. When the time comes, he could even form his own kingdom and create a human society in here. According to rumors, the genuine residence of the ancient and powerful clans wasn't on the real earth, rather, all of their clansmen lived in the heavenly world opened by the clan. This was one of the deep reserves of an ancient clan. This was also the reason why they weren't constrained by the powers controlling the continents. Because they have their own heaven, no one could do anything to them. Naturally, Li Yunmyu's desire of establishing a sufficiently large world with his present strength was just a pipe dream, because it was just impossible to reach that point just by relying on his strength and resources alone. However, as long as he continues to use the shadow hack and congeal more shadows, accompanied by the increase in his strength and the increase in the amount of flux energy crystals he obtains, this might not just remain as a dream. As for the present, he could only stop the expansion here. After throwing away all the first layer and second layer flux crystals on him, Li Yunmyu didn't remain in the world much longer and returned back to reality with a thought. Ding! Because you have successfully refined the origin dimensional stone, a new type of energy is born inside your body. The system has classified this energy as world energy. Ding! Because your present heaven is too small, your world energy can only be used passively absorb the external attack damage. As your world grows bigger, its ability to absorb the external attack damage will also increase. Based on the present size of your world energy can absorb 70% attack damage from a first layer ordinary crystal flux disciple. Continue to work hard. When Li Yunmyu received this notification from the system, he wasn't surprised as he had learned in the library that according to general beliefs, when someone refined the origin dimensional stone, he could use the world energy of the world he opened. People had known about the existence of world energy a long time ago. But the powerful beings who had established their own heavens were simply too few. Everything that ordinary people had heard was just legends among legends, they couldn't even think of personally seeing it. He was also perfectly satisfied learning that his small world could absorb 70% attack damage from an ordinary crystal flux disciple. With his triple-layered defense combined into one and the heavenly world which could absorb external damage, presently, Li Yunmu could be considered as having the highest defensive power among fluxers with same cultivation base. Now, even if he just remained standing on the spot, a black crystal flux disciple might not necessarily be able to penetrate his defense with one attack. After reaching this stage, his present defense could be said to be unparalleled among his peers. Just as he finished sorting the earnings he had obtained from Dwarf Witch King, a hubbub of noise came from outside. Li Yunmu immediately put the work of going through the earnings to one side and opened the door to take a look. Li Zi's Lucky Star Battle Squad had returned. The lucky star from their name hadn't really brought much luck to them. From the 13 people which were in her battle squad, only 8 had returned alive while the rest 5 had lost their lives under the hands of the fifth-dimensional beings. Okay, you shouldn't blame yourself. You were able to lead the 7 others back to the castle which could already be considered good enough. One senior sister patted her shoulders to console her. Within a short while, Zhang Ying's Phoenix Battle Squad composed of 5 people also returned. Because the strength of this all-women battle squad was relatively mediocre and Zhang Ying understood that clearly, they hadn't gone far from the Steel Castle. Thus, the all-women battle squad led by her had been extremely fortunate. They had rushed to the vicinity of the Steel Castle as soon as the great spell descended. The reason why they hadn't entered the Steel Castle was that they encountered a fifth-dimensional being on their way to the castle, so they had to take a roundabout route to advance towards the Steel Castle so as to avoid it. Overall, it could be said that the Phoenix Battle Squad had been more scared than hurt and hadn't lost any of their members. Naturally, they also didn't have great profits. When the people of Lucky Star Battle Squad, Phoenix Battle Squad and the Idiot Trio from the Big Bear Battle Squad met with each other, everyone was surprised to discover that the Battle Squad considered as the weakest in the Lucky Wind City had surprisingly matured the most. Even Crooked Teeth Jiang, who had the weakest cultivation among the squad, had opened all the 4 flux points his legs. His speed had been boosted greatly. Li Daxing also wasn't lacking. His share in the profits was even higher than Crooked Teeth Jiang. He had opened 3 points in chest and stomach as well as the 2 flux points in his right arm, gaining a new level of respect in everyone's eyes after 10 days. Within 10 days, Li Daxing had opened total 5 main flux points. The difference between his current strength compared to before was like the difference between heaven and earth. And there wasn't any need to talk about Brother Thin. With his high-grade innate talent and Ling Shuang's share going entirely to him, he was the person who had advanced most after Li Yunmu. Within 10 days, he had opened all the flux points in his legs and hands well as the celestial point, for a total of 9 flux points. If the great spell hadn't descended, then he would have certainly congealed his crystal armor within the month while training at this pace. But even if he had only opened 9 flux points in 10 days, he still attracted the envy from people of the Phoenix and Lucky Star battle squads. Having a good elder sister was really too great. Then what about you, Li Yunmu? Zhang Ying was an amiable person. Usually, apart from Lunuja, she was the only one who conversed normally with Li Yunmu. Although they hadn't talked much, because of their little acquaintance, she walked to Li Yunmu and asked. Instantly, Zhang Ying's action attracted the attention of others. Especially the members of the battle squad led by Li Zi, who were wishing to ask him but needed a scapegoat. Chapter 76, Not Even Worth a Fart. The number of casualties from Lucky Star Battle Squad had been disastrous. Additionally, their earnings were not great, so naturally, their cultivation didn't increase by much. However, excluding Ling Shuang who was an outsider, Big Xiang and both his friends had suddenly become stronger and fiercer, stepping over their head. So presently, their hopes lay on Li Yunmu to provide them some solace. While Li Daxing and his gang had thrown lots of money and clung to Ling Shuang, allowing their cultivation rise faster than theirs, then what about Li Yunmu? This guy came from the 16th high school and did not have any great background. What kind of place was this 16th high school? Speaking honestly, it was the place where examinations for ordinary people were held. It doesn't have any resources to provide assistance to fluxers who had awakened, let alone speak of providing battle skills to cultivate. Which person that shows the slightest probability of awakening hadn't already been brought together to the top 5 ranked schools? Thus, according to the majority of people present here, although Lee Yunmyu was also a rookie fluxer of Lucky Wind Great Courtyard, they didn't put him in their eyes. They even subconsciously removed him from their circle. This wasn't because Lee Yunmyu's attitude was bad, which resulted in everyone hating him. It was because their idea of superiority of social class was intrinsic to human nature. From the beginning, the feeling of being superior was engraved deeply in their mind, and this feeling did not change within a short time. There wasn't any harm in comparison, as there was no such thing as trash, only relatively more trash. When Zhang Ying asked Lee Yunmyu about how much his cultivation had increased, many people in the surroundings strained their ears to listen. When Lee Yunmyu heard this question, he felt a headache coming. For the time being, he also didn't know what would be the best reply to this question. He couldn't just inform them that he had opened all 12 flux points, as it would definitely attract unwanted attention, which he could do without. Oh, couldn't he just say that he opened the 4 flux points in both his legs? In any case, he just needed to remove the attention on him. Now that he already has a heavenly world in him and his body also possesses world energy, he didn't feel like competing with these youngsters for fame. Yunmyu, he should be somewhat stronger than me. Lee Yunmyu was imagining all sorts of scenario in his head but hadn't found a good solution, so he hadn't opened his mouth. But before he could speak, the honest brother Thin gave an embarrassing smile and helped him to answer. What? He is even stronger than you. Another fellow student who was in the Lucky Star battle squad as a scapegoat couldn't accept it. What kind of joke was this? Brother Thin had obtained Ling Shuang's portion of profits. Furthermore, he also had upper middle grade talent but could only open 9 flux points. Lee Yunmyu, this nobody from 16th high school, was more formidable than Brother Thin? Haha. He shook his head without saying anything, only giving a profound smile to Brother Thin, implying that he had understood that Brother Thin was trying to protect a fellow squad member's face. The only complete morons would believe him. Even Zhang Ying, who didn't have any kind of prejudice towards Lee Yunmyu, couldn't believe Brother Thin's reply in her heart. It should be the case. Anyway, Yunmyu is certainly more powerful than us. Brother Thin replied without certainty in his voice. He didn't know the exact number of flux points opened by Lee Yunmyu. After all, when Lee Yunmyu was battling, only his 2 legs burst out with flux energy. However, since he constantly obtained almost half the total profits of the squad by himself every day, then he certainly must have opened more flux points than him. Furthermore, Lee Yunmyu's battle prowess was obvious to everyone in the Big Bear battle squad. However, everyone considered the uncertainty in Brother Thin's voice as his guilty conscience, so all of them just smiled and just let the issue slide. Lee Yunmyu also didn't say anything about their reaction. They could think whatever they like. This was an outcome he was willing to settle for. Okay, no need to make wild guesses. Lee Yunmyu possesses extremely outstanding battle prowess. This time, Lucky Wind City's rank had advanced to 80th position, while he and the entire Big Bear battle squad had made a huge contribution. Wait for the Lucky Wind battle squad to return, then I, as the representative of Lucky Wind Great Courtyard, will open the Fluxer Treasure Palace. When the time comes, I will provide rewards on behalf of our Lucky Wind City in celebration of reaching a higher rank. Tang untimely interrupted everyone's blind guessing. However, no one earnestly believed the protective action of Brother Thin or Senior Tang An's words. When Senior Tang An had interrupted them from looking into the matter, all of them just thought that it was the good intentions of a senior to protect Lee Yunmyu's face and make sure that he wasn't greatly embarrassed. All of them had to give face to a senior. Furthermore, when everyone heard that the treasure palace of the Lucky Wind City would be opened in the near future, they instantly began to grow excited. Although Lucky Wind City's Flux or Treasure Palace wasn't as luxurious as Heavenly Cloud Cities, as there hasn't been anyone with great performance in the past few years, a lot of precious things must have accumulated there. If they could obtain a C grade or higher Flux cultivation battle skill, that would be double or triple of their profit in the wilderness. Immediately, everyone started to wish that the Lucky Wind Battle Squad would return quickly and began to wait for them. Lucky Wind Battle Squad's return was even later than everyone had expected. Afternoon the next day, the battle squad led by Lunuja suddenly returned. Luojin returned while being carried on a stretcher by his squad members. Many people inquired about their circumstance, only then did they become aware that Luojin had been sneak attacked. If Big Bear Battle Squad hadn't been attacked themselves, then Big Xiong and others would probably have no prior information about this. After learning this, everyone immediately became enraged and began to rain curses on some random city for being a sore loser. Naturally, all of them had only used their mouths to abuse. As for what they thought in their heart, there's no way of knowing that. Li Yunmu observed everyone's reactions and sighed in his heart. Apparently, this competition also had its dark side. Fortunately, he hadn't associated with these people and had chosen the Big Bear Battle Squad. Although this squad didn't have great strength, at least there wasn't any scheming behind his back. Big Xiong and his friends weren't that reliable, but their moral character didn't have many flaws. Fellow student Lunuja, are you all right? Li Yunmu didn't seem to have any sense of self-worth and directly went to talk to younger sister Nuja, at least that was what everyone else around them thought. However, what made them helpless was that their younger sister Nuja seemed quite intimate with Li Yunmu. God damn it. I am fine, what about you? As you can see, I am quite healthy and active. Li Yunmu laughed teasingly in front of younger sister Nuja and nimbly moved around. His mood was pretty good after hearing the pleasant laughter of younger sister Nuja. What happened to Luojin wasn't his concern, his priority was only that nothing happened to younger sister Nuja. Both of them kept chatting with each other while ignoring the existence of the others around them. This was more than the other male students could endure. All of them felt that this Li Yunmu didn't have any sense of shame, he was just too loathsome. Ridiculous, how dare this person talk to our goddess like that? Some other fellow students said, feeling aggrieved. Don't talk about him, this person just doesn't have any shame, no one among us is as arrogant as him. Ho-woo, this Li Yunmu doesn't put our elder brother Jin in his eyes. Presently, elder brother Jin is injured so he can't teach him a lesson. Don't tell me you are just going to stand there and let him talk. The gazes of all male students concentrated on Ho-woo as they all knew Ho-mu secretly liked Lunuja. This person had quite a temper, but surprisingly, why was he enduring even after watching Li Yunmu chat intimately with Lunuja? It's really too strange. Do you all think I am a fool? Want to use my blade to kill others? My, Ho-woo's blade couldn't be borrowed that easily. Ho-woo only glanced at Li Yunmu once with a complex expression but didn't try to find trouble for him like he always did. He just coldly snorted towards the people trying to incite him. Perhaps, others didn't know, but he, being the second most powerful person of the Lucky Wind Battle Squad, had heard some information in passing. Usually, he would have already run off to teach Li Yunmu a lesson and let the other party know that he could not jump around without strength or the outcome wouldn't be good. But now, he controlled himself. After all, when all was said and done, this was the world of the strong. If this Li Yunmu really was as formidable as he had heard, then he, Ho-woo, was very curious to know his true strength. Haha, why is he hiding his strength? Interesting. Whether that information was true or false, I must use something to probe him to reveal his true character. Come, our training competition's ranking list is being announced publicly. Heavens! Our Lucky Wind City's ranking has been raised to 48th position. Why is it higher than the 80th position Senior Tang'an had told us? Chapter 77, Got a problem? Let's fight! A senior hastily rushed in and shouted. Everyone immediately opened their stellar comms to take a look, and sure enough, Lucky Wind City's ranking in this year's training competition had advanced to the top 50, directly stopping at 48th position. Top 50. Tang fiercely raised his fist. Compared to anyone else, he was more excited as he was the main leader of this year's Lucky Wind Great Courtyard, so this year's exceptional achievement was closely related to him. Come, everyone. Let's open the treasure palace. Lucky Wind City's Fluxor Treasure Palace hadn't been opened for 4 years now. It can't be helped since Lucky Wind City would always be ranked near the bottom every year. With such performance, who could talk about opening the treasure palace and getting rewards? But now was different, their city had advanced to the top 50 from 130th position. This kind of performance by any city under Heavenly Cloud City would attract attention. Entering the top 50 meant that this year, Lucky Wind City would receive more resources, which was directly related to the benefit of the small city. Next year, Lucky Wind City would certainly use this year's extra resources to cultivate even more outstanding rookies, unlike this year, when they could only provide a war blade and survivor battle armor to the rookies. Li Yunmu didn't care about Lucky Wind City's position. After experiencing the excitement of receiving a godly object like the Origin Dimensional Stone, what else could excite him? However, he still couldn't ignore the reward from Lucky Wind Great Courtyard's treasure palace. Honestly speaking, he was presently quite poor. Although he had received a great profit after defeating the Dwarf Witch King's stronghold, he was still very poor to death. It wasn't his fault since he had his own heavenly world. Regardless of how many resources or wealth he has, it would continue to be used up indefinitely without end. He swept a glance at Lucky Wind City's name. After careful observation, he saw that Lucky Wind City's rise to 48th from the initial 80th position wasn't without any cause. Since Lucky Wind City had suffered sneak attacks on its battle squads, the Fluxor Guild had decided to provide compensation. This compensation was making the exception of increasing its ranks by 10 positions. Naturally, this compensation was comparable to their previous loss. Although it's still far from enough, at least it showed their attitude. Apart from this, the 10 cities ranked ahead of Lucky Wind City had been struck off from the list as a consequence of their role in the attacks, and thus, Lucky Wind City had moved up from 80th position. Furthermore, after the descent of the Great Spell of Dimensional Field, many cities saw their battle squads being completely exterminated, thus allowing the Lucky Wind City to enter the top 50. What? Big Bear Battle Squad has contributed the most? Their contribution is even higher compared to Luojin's Battle Squad, which was considered our main strength. After seeing the ranking list and looking at the detailed analysis which hadn't been made public until now, they suddenly realized that the unimaginable had happened. That's right, the Big Bear Battle Squad had killed a large number of dwarf witches. Just based on the number they killed, their contribution is higher than the main battle squad. Fellow student Li Yunmu and Ling Shuang's perfect close and range combat combination was the crucial reason for Lucky Wind City entering the top 50. Because of him, the grade of rewards from the treasure palace had been altered. This time, the battle squad with the highest contribution will receive A-grade rewards. Come now, we should all go to the treasure palace. Without caring for everyone's shock, Tang took the lead and walked towards the treasure palace. Everyone hadn't expected that when Tang previously said those words, it wasn't to save face for Li Yunmu, but rather, that was the truth. You led the Big Bear Battle Squad together with Ling Shuang. Both Li Ziyi and Zhang Ying walked towards him one after other with expressions of incredulity on their faces and asked, trying to confirm it. Haha, do you all believe it now? My brother had been hiding his strength. Those who do not have strength make the most noise, while those who have true strength think it's beneath them to provide explanations. Li Daxing excitedly patted Li Yunmu's shoulder and started talking drivel. That's right, our Big Bear Battle Squad's Yunmu had come out unscathed after battling with a half-step golden crystal fluxor, unlike someone who talks so much about being the most powerful person in the city but now is lying on a stretcher. Crooked Teeth Jiang and Li Daxing, these two idiots, simply got hyped up in front of an audience. Feeling quite pleased with themselves, they even forgot about his father and directly attacked Luo Jin. Li Yunmu almost exploded with anger because of these two morons. My god, this was the one trait of the idiot trio which he hated the most. With the bestowal of an A-grade reward, the Big Bear Battle Squad was already being envied by everyone. Now, this Li Daxing and his stupid friend have even divulged this information, once again provoking people. Immediately, Ho Wu walked forward in large strides and coldly gazed at the four people of the Big Bear Battle Squad. What heavenly battle prowess! What genius! Only able to use your mouth to bark. Li Yunmu, today, allow me to test your true strength. Allow me to see the genius who escaped alive from an attack by a half-step golden crystal flux disciple. Ho Wu finally couldn't endure anymore and took the initiative. The difference from previous times was that this time, Ho Wu was much more dignified and respectful. Previously, he didn't put Li Yunmu in his eyes and would have dispatched anyone else to deal with him. But now was different. Since even Senior Tang'an had confirmed the opponent's strength, then this opponent must be somewhat powerful. Although he still couldn't believe that one person's strength could transform so greatly, he still gave sufficient face to Li Yunmu. Any powerful person was worthy of being respected. Ho Wu separated from the crowd and lightly inserted his weapon in the ground. Then standing in a formal challenging position, he said solemnly, "We will fight one bout. If you can defeat me, then I will sincerely apologize for scorning you in the past. But if you can't defeat me, then your Big Bear Battle Squad must pay the price of insulting Luo Jin." Following Ho Wu's sudden challenge to Li Yunmu, Senior Tang'an and other seniors walking in the front halted their footsteps. Tang'an hesitated for a moment but finally didn't do anything to stop the challenge as he also wanted to personally witness Li Yunmu's true strength. The person who formed a perfect combination with Ling Shuang to fiercely lead the Big Bear Battle Squad and allowed the Lucky Wind City to enter top 50. The person who came out unscathed after being sneak attacked by a half-step golden crystal fluxer. The person who had similarly grasped the violent blade skill. With his ordinary background, how did this Li Yunmu accomplish so many things? Quit your nonsense, why must our Yunmu battle with you and your half-step black crystal cultivation? Yes, this isn't fair. Don't you have any face? You have congealed your crystal armor, how can this be a fair challenge? This time, Big Xiang and his friends also understood that they have courted disaster by shooting their mouth. Li Daxing's mood sank. He had only said a few things in excitement, why has this person taken them seriously? Actually, he himself was certain of Li Yunmu's true strength. Although he had bravely massacred the dwarf witches, Ho Wu had awakened his flux energy long ago. Furthermore, he was a second-layer flux disciple who had cultivated several battle skills. He was far more formidable compared to those weak dwarf witches. I will not use the crystal armor and my weapons. Li Yunmu, does your genius battle prowess only amount to so much? Don't make me look down upon you. Ho Wu completely ignored the trio of Big Xiang. Regarding people who had no strength, he didn't even look at them. Both his eyes were gazing fiercely at Li Yunmu. Shouldn't we not battle point one of our own? That would be meaningless. Li Yunmu was also feeling quite vexed. Why does it have to carry on and on? With his present strength, the challenge by an opponent at the level of Ho Wu wasn't the least bit exciting. Even if he just remained standing in place, allowing the opponent to strike, the opponent may not be able to break his defense. However, his lack of interest was taken as him being terrified by others. Zhou Jing, who had always despised Li Yunmu for bothering Lu Nujia, suddenly spoke up. What happened? Did you say one of our own just now? Just a moment ago, your Big Bear Battle Squad was humiliated our squad captain Luo Jin, humph. Less nonsense, we men will battle to our heart's content today. Only the powerful will be the victor. Ho Wu didn't want his challenge to turn into a bickering contest and also didn't want intervention from other people. Next instant, he stamped on the ground and his whole body crouched like a tiger and rushed towards Li Yunmu, launching an explosive punch towards him. Fierce Tiger Out First Form, Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist. Chapter 78, Blown to Smithereens. Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist. Ho-Wu's presence suddenly became fiercer as he rushed towards Li Yunmu, launching his explosive first. At this instant, the main target of the fist, Li Yunmu, even sensed that this explosive fist seemed like an underworld tiger ready to pounce on him with its bloody mouth wide open, with wave after wave of tiger's thunderous roars piercing his ears. The extreme shaking of the eardrum gave people the sensation as if they have gone deaf. Sure enough, Ho-Wu wasn't arrogant without reason. This Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist was certainly a B-grade level punching skill. Even among B-grade skills, it would be top tier. This person wasn't using weapons from starts as this fist skill was his true killing technique. When he took the initiative to say that he wouldn't be using weapons, it seemed as if it was just a courtesy comparison contest, but in reality, he was just planning a sneak attack. With his nimble intuition, Li Yunmu could clearly sense that Ho-Wu's fist was filled with killing intent rather than his desire to have a comparison contest with a fellow student of the courtyard. This person was extremely sinister. The opponent had neither used weapons nor congealed weapons in battle, not just to make him and others careless, but to also get rid of his most reliable violent blade skill. This Ho-Wu wasn't simple. Although he seems to be the straightforward and violent type at first, with his deep scheming and plans, how could he be so simple? The opponent's Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist was extremely fierce, but who was Li Yunmu? He was someone who had come out alive after experiencing the 8 fiery dragon claws of a half-step golden crystal fluxer. How could he lose now when facing a half-step black crystal flux disciple? Good, come. Li Yunmu was aroused by opponent's intentions. Since he couldn't conceal his strength, then he wouldn't conceal it anymore. If the opponent wants a battle, then he would fight. Since you have schemed to abolish my violent blade skill, then I, your father, would do as you desire. Break for me. Within a split second, Li Yunmu, who had decided not to hide his true strength, surged with flux energy from the 12 flux points that formed a cycle, as a layer of flux energy protective cover appeared on his body. Using the flux energy protective cover as a shield, his Admiralty cover also appeared, increasing his defense to the pinnacle. Iron Body. Instantly, Li Yunmu unleashed his iron body and similarly charged forward without the slightest intention of dodging and punched heavily. 2 fierce punches heavily collided. Ordinary crystal flux energy versus black crystal flux energy, fist against fist. Everyone could clearly see Ho-Wu launching an explosive punch transformed into an underworld tiger, and Li Yunmu, who had suddenly erupted out with flux energy, launching an ash-gray colored punch. Both the heavy explosive punches collided together. Bang! The 2 fists carrying terrifying flux energy knocked heavily against each other. Instantly, shockwaves visible to the naked eye erupted out from the center of the 2 people. The figure of a person was sent flying out rapidly like an artillery shell from the center of the explosion. Once they saw who it was, everyone standing at the scene was shocked. Ho-Wu lost? A Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist erupting with black crystal flux energy had surprisingly been broken by a punch from an ordinary crystal flux disciple? Have they gone blind? Thud 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 thud. On the contrary, Li Yunmu was forced to move back 8 steps, with every step leaving a depression in the ground. However, after stabilizing himself, Li Yunmu seemed completely fine. Unrivaled defense. That's right. With such formidable and unrivaled defense, even if the gap between them was of 1 whole layer, even if the enemy had used a B-grade killing technique, by relying on Admiralty cover, flux energy protective cover, and iron body, Li Yunmu was able to endure the strike. Even the final remaining amount of power which had passed through his defense had been absorbed by his heavenly world instantly. The reason why he was forced to retreat 8 steps was purely due to the recoil from the fist. How is it possible? I cannot believe it. It is absolutely impossible. How can you endure my Devil Tiger Thunder Prison Fist without receiving any damage? Ho-Woo, who was blown away more than 10 meters, crawled back up, but his condition was extremely unsightly. All the clothes on his right arm had turned into tatters, from the flux energy shockwaves during the clash of punches moments ago. If Lee Yun-mu had any fist skills, then with that punch a moment ago, Ho-Woo would have been seriously injured. But even then, Ho-Woo's right arm wasn't looking too good at this moment. His fist had already swollen and the bone inside was hurting badly. What kind of body refining skill has this guy trained in, to make his body was so hard? Furthermore, he had also received backlash from his own fist. When Lee Yun-mu had launched his punch just now, it wasn't that powerful, but the damage reflection property of Admiralty cover was sufficient to bring the opponent to tears. It must be known that this fist contained the power from the supreme skill that Ho-Woo had. Similarly, after upgrading to the 10th layer, Iron Body not only increased the defense of his body, but when he launched the punch with his full strength, his fist was like a brick congealed of iron. Other than that, Lee Yun-mu's punch was only an ordinary punch filled with flux energy erupting from the 12 flux points in his body. Furthermore, with the 50% increase in damage the Iron Fist had gained from charged assault made it unbearable. If Ho-Woo had the protection of his crystal armor, he wouldn't be reduced to such pitiful state. Unfortunately, he had fallen into his own trap. Nothing is impossible. Since you have challenged me to a fight, you must pay the price. Being challenged to an all-out battle instantly, Lee Yun-mu didn't have the feeling of mercy. Originally, he appeared to be harmless to everyone. Naturally, to those who stood on his side. But since Ho-Woo had tried to find trouble for him many times now, then Lee Yun-mu mustn't be blamed for acting ruthlessly. Since you dare to act against me, then you must pay the price. Bang! Lee Yun-mu stamped on the ground and his figure charged forward like a wild beast. Since you have used your fist against me, I will also use my fist, to blow you to smithereens. Eat my fist. Courting death, you dare. Why wouldn't I dare? Lee Yun-mu didn't waste any words and launched a heavy fist towards him. Bang 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 bang, within a blink of an eye, both of them had traded more than 10 fists. No one had anticipated that Lee Yun-mu would turn out to be so ferocious. Subconsciously, he had already started to integrate the world power of his heavenly world. By this time, the origin dimensional stone had completely merged with his body. His body was the heavenly world and the heavenly world was his body. One fist after another bombarded Ho-Woo. Every fist, apart from being indestructible, was also filled with flux energy erupting from Lee Yun-mu's whole body. Finally, they also contained a trace of world energy integrated with them, which made his fists increasingly heavier and increasingly more savage. In front of strength, all schemes were useless. This Ho-Woo had used a pretense of martial competition to scheme to kill him? That made him an enemy. Towards enemies, Lee Yun-mu only had one opinion: they must all be blown to smithereens. Ding! Your battle intent had soared, you have gained an initial understanding of using world energy. Ding! Because you have been accumulating experience regarding fist technique for a long time, you have also successfully assimilated the heavenly world's energy into it. You have comprehended the world-killing fist. World-killing fist is a fatal fist technique in which the mighty power of the world had been blended, including the world's sealing energy as well as the world's crushing energy. Currently, your world-killing fist is at the first layer. With both of them repeatedly colliding with each other, Lee Yun-mu, who initially didn't have any understanding of fist techniques, had finally gained enlightenment. Because of this, Lee Yun-mu's confidence instantly soared. You puny person, world-killing fist, blow him for me. Rumbai. At this instant, the heavens seemed to have opened a new door for Lee Yun-mu. Lee Yun-mu only felt as if boundless energy was surging through the empty world somewhere in his body. Covered with the boost in flux energy, a heavy fist was launched. Seeing this fist with unprecedented power, everyone felt as if this one fist covered their entire field of view. At this moment, all of them felt that the only thing that in the whole universe was this fist. One fist to seal off the world and to blow away their world. The space around the fist seemed to crumble layer after layer. The main target of the fist, Ho-Woo had the sensation as Lee Yun-mu had when he faced the 8 blazing claws killing move. He felt like he was a housefly trapped within amber, unable to make the slightest of movements. Thump! A heavily muffled sound echoed. It was the sound of Lee Yun-mu's fist striking Ho-Woo's chest just when everyone around was about to lose their minds. But Ho-Woo wasn't sent flying away. In fact, he didn't even retreat a single step. His entire person seemed to have been firmly fixed to the same location. However, his complexion had turned deathly pale and blood sprayed from his mouth. Just when everyone was thinking that it was over, suddenly a series of bang bang pop pop sounds echoed. After the fist was completed, only now did Ho-Woo's body begin to violently fall apart. That's right, this one fist was enough to blow him to small pieces. Among the newly joined Fluxers of Lucky Wind City, after the descent of the great spell of Dimensional Field, another person had died again. Chapter 79, Lucky Wind City's Treasure Palace. Is there anyone else who wants to challenge me? It would be better if all the challengers came together. After blowing Ho-Woo into pieces with one punch, Lee Yun-mu's battle intent soared as his gaze inspected everyone on scene. He also felt quite angry at the same time. If they want to look for trouble with him or want to abolish his cultivation like Ho-Woo, then he might as well use this chance to settle all such issues. You surprisingly dared to kill Ho-Woo. While Lee Yun-mu had ignored everyone, all the others were silent because of fear. After a long moment, Zhou Jing managed to sober up slightly from the shock and shrieked. So what? Only he is allowed to kill me but I can't kill him. Lee Yun-mu sneered towards Zhou Jing. It was clearly just a competition to learn from each other but you killed your fellow student. You are too vicious. When Zhou Jing saw Lee Yun-mu sneering towards her, she subconsciously retreated a few steps backward. Seniors, he has killed someone, he killed Ho-Woo. Haha. Lee Yun-mu couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this insane woman and continued to smile. He didn't believe that if he could see through Ho-Woo's scheme to kill him, then Tang En, who was a highly experienced fluxer appointed to guide them rookies, wouldn't be able to see through his scheme. Since it was an official challenge, life or death were the only possible outcomes. This matter is now considered settled. Tang En summarized with a calm face. The disputes between fluxers were usually settled on the basis of strength. If it was just ordinary comparison contest, then things wouldn't have progressed so far. But since Ho-Woo had decided to initiate a formal challenge, then Lee Yun-mu blowing him into pieces wouldn't be considered a crime, whether by the Central Continent government or the Fluxer Guild. As for Tang En and the other senior students, they had clearly seen that Ho-Woo had attacked without any reservations. Any person who has a keen eye and a logical mind could understand exactly what had happened here. The only person who can be blamed for Ho-Woo's death was Ho-Woo himself since he had inferior strength compared to his opponent. If he desired to kill someone, then he should naturally be prepared to die himself. At this moment, Tang En was both grieved and emotional. He had never expected that a challenge between members of the same courtyard would result in death. Similarly, he also never expected that Ho-Woo would scheme to kill a fellow comrade of the same courtyard. Their Lucky Wind City didn't have many newcomer fluxers from the start. And of these few newcomers, many had perished during the descent of the Great Spell. And now, Ho-Woo, who was pretty powerful, had also been killed. But it was fine. A person who has such sinister thoughts should be killed. However, the battle prowess displayed by Lee Yun-mu had stunned everyone. They all had the same thought: formidable, too formidable. This feeling of strength wasn't because his cultivation was high, but rather, because of his strong battle prowess. Furthermore, the act of blowing Ho-Woo to smithereens clearly showed that his resolve was quite firm, which left a profound impression on each and every person present. How strong was he exactly? No one knew the answer to this question. But people like Tang En knew that Lee Yun-mu still has violent blade in his arsenal which he hadn't displayed. This person was certainly harboring many secrets. For the first time, everyone had seen a portion of Li Yunmu's true strength. Their faces were filled with complicated emotions. Some were scared and didn't even dare to look him in the eye, much less have the intention of trying to find any trouble with him. When a person was just slightly more powerful than you would feel envious and try to compete with him. But when the difference was as large as the difference between the heavens and earth, then you couldn't even feel envious. At this moment, many people clearly sensed that the difference between them and Li Yunmu was just that large, that Li Yunmu was too dreadful. Brother Thin's earlier words were completely true. Within a short 10 days, he had opened all 12 flux points in his body and his battle prowess skyrocketed. Then there were some people who couldn't control their excitement. Their lucky Wind City had finally produced a genius who would bring them honor and glory. With his rise, they would rise, with his fall, they would suffer. Thinking this, some people were looking at Li Yunmu, who stood at the center, with a shine in their eyes. Li Ziyi had never experienced such a moment before when her heart would throb so quickly. Even though she never lacked attention from the opposite sex, those admirers of hers couldn't compare to Li Yunmu with his overflowing battle intent and the desire to massacre. In front of him, all of them just faded from her mind. What was strength? This was strength. A powerful person didn't just have high cultivation. They also had a strong heart filled with overflowing battle intent that was ready to cut down anyone while fearing none. Well then, this matter can be considered settled. I will inform the Fluxer Guild about the situation later. Now, follow me to the treasure palace. Tang An promptly concluded the matter. All the surrounding senior students nodded their heads in agreement. What was Ho Wu to them? Nothing more than a corpse. Furthermore, their lucky Wind City has Li Yunmu now. They could clearly see that in the future, Li Yunmu's display of force by killing Ho Wu would remain etched deeply in the hearts of everyone. Following this, the matter was settled with Tang An's decision. Only Zhou Jing's head was still lowered as she could do nothing now other than harbor unspeakable resentment in her heart. Ho Wu had died and died in such a way. She was unable to accept this fact. But this was not fantasy and reality was cruel. No one could bring the dead back to life. Everyone then followed Tang An to the treasure palace. When the Lucky Wind City's treasure palace was finally opened after several years, everyone looked inside with excitement. At this moment, everyone completely forgot about the recent matter as their minds were entirely focused on the things inside. Li Yunmu wasn't an exception, this was too lavish. But still, compared to the loot he had received after killing the king-class dimensional beast, the things inside the Fluxer treasure palace of Lucky Wind City paled in comparison. Li Yunmu has something that the Lucky Wind City's treasure palace didn't have, and that was the origin dimensional stone. Even all the resources of a small city couldn't compare to the origin dimensional stone. However, even though Lucky Wind City was poor, it was still considered as a city. Thus, they had some heritage saved over the years. In the first moments, Li Yunmu wished he could just collect all the resources inside the treasure palace for himself. If he possessed these resources, his heavenly world would certainly expand greatly. Naturally, this was all just his wishful thinking. The Lord of the city has sent down his command. The Big Bear Battle Squad has made the highest contribution and will each obtain an A-grade resource. Junior Apprentice Sister Zhao Lan, you are responsible for leading the Big Bear Battle Squad to the area where A-grade rewards are kept. Ma Cheng, you are responsible for leading the Lucky Wind Battle Squad to the B-grade rewards area. Zheng Zihuan, you are responsible for guiding the Phoenix Battle Squad and Lucky Star Battle Squad to the C-grade rewards area. Under the arrangements made by Tang An, none among the newcomer Fluxers of Lucky Wind City were left behind. All of them were evaluated according to their contribution and bestowed rewards. It could only be said that the achievement of entering top 50 among the 130-something cities was so dazzling that even the stingy and miser city lord had surprisingly shown unprecedented generosity. When the members of the Big Bear Battle Squad arrived in the specified region, they discovered that the A-grade rewards area of Lucky Wind City's treasure palace was not very large, it was extremely small. They understood that there weren't many A-grade rewards. This wasn't much of a surprise, after all, even if these were accumulated through the efforts of all the Fluxers of Lucky Wind City, an A-grade product was just too high-leveled. The idiot trio directly went towards the cabinet where flux methods and battle skills were kept. As they slowly opened the door, 7 globes flickering with light appeared in their field of view. These were the globes used to pass on flux methods and cultivation skills. These 7 contained A-grade flux cultivation battle skills. Instantly, everyone's eyes focused on them. The legendary A-grade battle skill. There were only 7 of them in the entire Lucky Wind City. Chapter 80, Underworld Raven. Li Yunmu was clear that these 7 relaying cultivation globes were actually 7 temporary doors to different independent dimensional spaces. The person who has the globe at the moment could allow his consciousness to descend into the dimensional space where he could practice the flux cultivation battle skill by following the imaginary fluxer projected by the unique space. But if you couldn't learn it even after practicing 100 times, then you could only blame your talent and wait until you die. Although the innate talent of a fluxer was very important, their perception and comprehension were also very important. When different people practice the same skill 100 times, they would each gain a different understanding of it. Thus, there would be a large disparity between the effect of skill revealed by these different people. Li Daxing and the other 2 were absolutely aware that the first choice belonged to Li Yunmu. They clearly understood that without Li Yunmu, they wouldn't have the qualifications to enter this A-grade rewards area. Li Yunmu, who wanted to look around first before choosing, was unable to repeatedly postpone making his decision. And so, he decided to choose one of the skills. After examining each and every one of them carefully, Li Yunmu decided to choose a consummate blade skill known as Aurora Killing Justice. This Aurora Killing Justice was a ruthless, formidable, and deadly blade skill that relies on its explosive piercing power. Presently, Li Yunmu didn't have any skills that could kill quickly. This was a deadly blade skill which would instantly boost his power greatly. Regardless of how strong violent blade was, it required him to strike repeatedly. Only when he made the final strike of the 18 strikes would it reveal its astonishing power. However, that required time and opportunity. This Aurora Killing Justice was different, it was an extremely powerful blade skill. It only has one positive quality, that it was extremely strong. Just by relying on that, it had entered A grade. It was easy to see how formidable it was. However, just as Li Yunmu had made his decision, the sudden sound of the system's notification echoed in his consciousness. See. Ding, the system has scanned the surroundings of the host. There is a particular item which is rather valuable. The system suggests that the host does not miss this opportunity. Li Yunmu heard this information in a daze and stopped his hand which he had just extended to collect the globe. N. Junior apprentice brother Yunmu, why did you stop? I see that this Aurora Justice killing suits you perfectly. After it is joined together with your violent blade skill, it will certainly take your battle prowess up by another notch. At some point in time, Senior Tang'an had also come over. Seeing Li Yunmu stop, he couldn't help but recommend it. When Li Yunmu's violent blade skill was combined with the Aurora Killing Justice skill, then this youngster present before his eyes would progress explosively. To the extent that he might even surpass many of the older generation in 1 or 2 years. Tang'an, who wholeheartedly cared about Lucky Wind City, was extremely hopeful that Li Yunmu would pick this blade skill. As for the other A-grade materials or metals or other sorts of treasures present there, for a newcomer rookie fluxer like Li Yunmu, they couldn't surpass the usefulness of this deadly skill. Oh, many thanks senior apprentice brother. But I was thinking that since I have not perfected violent blade skill, so for the time being, I wouldn't focus my attention on another battle skill. Li Yunmu was fully aware of the system's nature. The system only recognizes something godly like the origin dimensional stone only as a precious treasure. Now that it had said that there was a somewhat valuable item here, then it would certainly not be an ordinary object. Maybe that item would even surpass the other A-grade rewards. Thus, he decided to renounce the aurora-killing justice as his choice. Then according to the system's notification, he began to explore the region where A-grade equipment was kept. The first thing which caught his eye was the snow-white runed long blade. It is a runed battle blade made of materials like snow steel and plum gold. Yang Chen subconsciously stopped to take a look. It could even be said that he had a deep impression of such a runed war blade made of snow steel and plum gold. If he remembered correctly, then the blade that Ling Shuang had thrown to him when the half-step golden crystal fluxer had tried to assassinate him was also a runed war blade whose grade was at least equal to this one lying here. These blades were much stronger than the war blade from the battle soldier equipment that he used. Regardless of whether it was sharpness, tenaciousness, or ability to hold flux energy, it was several grades higher. The only difference this blade had with Ling Shuang's was that this didn't have any soldier soul attached to it. However, Li Yunmu already possessed a very powerful soldier soul, the resentful soul of the dwarf witch king that the system had already collected. The resentful soul of a 12-colored rainbow king was far more powerful than the one that Ling Shuang's war blade had. But soon, he resisted the urge in his heart and looked toward another object reclining at the end of the frame where equipment was exhibited. It was a variegated old battle bow. Sure enough, it was the object that the system had detected. At first glance, it seemed at least 200 years old. What did this imply? It meant that this old fellow belonged to the Dark Ages. The battle bow was quite large and its string was a full 1.5 m long. There were numerous inscriptions carved onto the body of the bow together with a totem of a black raven hissing towards the heaven. Li Yunmu couldn't stop his desire to take it and began to carefully observe it. But after examining it, he didn't discover anything unique about it and didn't sense a single energy fluctuation from it. "Senior, what is this bow?" Since he didn't know, Li Yunmu asked. As it was in the A-grade rewards area of Lucky Wind City's treasure palace, it certainly had a profound background. "This bow?" Tang increased his brows and said after a long while. "I also don't know much about the history of this battle bow. Previously, our city lord had taken it to various appraising masters but none of them could identify it. We only know that it is known as Underworld Raven. Many seniors of our Lucky Wind courtyard have used it in the past but its strength was quite mediocre. With the strength it had shown, it was only comparable to lower quality B-grade objects. Why are you asking? Don't tell me you abandoned the Aurora killing justice for this." "Yes, I don't know why, but from the moment I saw it, I sensed that there was some destiny between us." Li Yunmu nodded his head, then asked with astonishment. "Strength comparable to only lower quality B-grade objects?" "Yes, this was decided after many of our seniors have used it. Although it is assessed as comparable to low-quality B-grade objects, it barely crosses the threshold of B-grade. If it didn't belong to the Dark Ages and its origin was known, then it wouldn't have been kept here in A-grade region. I advise you to not choose this. Furthermore, you use violent blade and fist skills, so why do you need a long-ranged weapon?" Tang An couldn't help himself. Lucky Wind City rarely has such a promising seedling, so he earnestly advised him. "No, I want it." Li Yunmu secretly rolled his eyes. Although this senior was acting out of kindness, this was a rare battle bow which has received the approval of the system. Anyway, this item being exhibited here was also because Lucky Wind City hasn't developed much. "Why?" Tang An asked, feeling puzzled. "I like it. This hunch is more than sufficient." Li Yunmu replied in a decisive tone. "All right." Feeling quite regretful, Tang An replied with a bitter smile. He truly couldn't understand this youngster. He was quite headstrong. Within a short while, all the newcomer fluxers were quite pleased with the rewards they had chosen. Naturally, they grew envious after seeing the Big Xiong and the others obtain A-grade flux cultivation battle skills. But after choosing carefully, Li Yunmu came out holding an ancient battle bow which seemed neither extremely strong nor had any special characteristics. Everyone was so astonished that their mouth fell open. "You have chosen this?" Lu Nuja came over and asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry.